Hello, and welcome to Archive Dive. I'm Maria Lockwood, a reporter with the Superior Telegram. Each month, we dip into files on historic events, people, and places in Superior and Douglas County with local historians. Did you know that Superior hosted royals during the World War II era? The Crown Prince and Princess of Norway visited Superior not once, but twice during that time. Newspapers of the day were filled with information about the royal visitors and their activities. The Crown Prince even took in a Superior Blues baseball game at their newly built stadium. Helping us dive into the story today is local historian Teddie Meronek. Hi, Teddie.
Hi, Maria.
Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
So, there were two visits by the Crown Prince and Princess.
There were two visits. And I just stumbled across this story one day looking through old newspapers. Mm-hmm. And, of course, was immediately, entranced by it, Royals and Superior. Mm-hmm. How does this happen? I think I got more interested in it when I had my DNA done, and I found out I was 4% Norwegian. So I don't know how that happened. I think it may have involved the Vikings in Ireland. But but I thought, wow, in Superior, why would they ever come to Superior? And then I was even more surprised when I found out that they were here twice. Oh,
so what did bring them to Superior?
Well, one of the factors was because of the large Scandinavian population in the Twin Ports. But they were also here in 1939. That was their first visit. And they were doing a goodwill tour across the United States. Oh. And I think it was a tour that was planned because they, living in Europe, knew what was coming. Oh. They knew what Germany had planned. And you have to make friends wherever you can when you know who's lurking on your doorstep. But the other reason they came here, in Superior anyway, is that Superior was celebrating its Golden Jubilee. It was the 50th year since the city had been incorporated as a city. Okay. So they were throwing a huge birthday party for Superior, and they decided to, the Norwegians are here on a goodwill tour. Why not make a stop in Superior and help us celebrate? But that wasn't the real reason they were here.
It wasn't? A party wasn't enough for them, huh?
Well, they were on a goodwill tour, but if you look through the telegram at that time when they were here in June, you did not find a mention of the other reason that they were in the Twin Ports, which was that they were here to dedicate Anger Tower.
In Duluth.
In Duluth, not in Superior, in Duluth. And I only stumbled across that because I remembered that there had been someone from the Norwegian Royal family here not that many years ago when they rededicated the tower. And this, in fact, was Olav and Martha, the Crown Prince and Princess's son, who was King of Norway at that time, King Harald. He came here for the rededication when the city of Duluth put about $400,000 into shoring up the tower and, improving it. So then I thought, and then within that article, they mentioned that Harold's parents had dedicated it back in 1939. And I thought, I never read anything about that in the Superior paper. But I wondered during their tour here, the 3 days or so that they were here, they kept going between Duluth and Superior. They stayed in Duluth, and I thought, well, why didn't they stay in Superior if they were here helping us celebrate our anniversary? And they would go back and forth.
Okay. So they came for the anniversary. Was this a big deal?
It was a huge deal. I couldn't believe what kind of show that the city put on. I mean, they had a 3-mile parade.
3 miles?
3 miles of parade, floats and whatever planned. They had a pageant.
What kind of pageant?
A pageant, and this would also be at the baseball stadium. It was a pageant of the history of Superior from the times of the missionaries and explorers to the current time in 1930. It was going to tell the whole history of Superior. I read one story that said there were 700 participants in the cast, and then another that said 500.
It's still a lot.
You've worked with actors. It's hard to corral 10 actors, but if you've got 500, and a lot of them were kids from the schools, choirs. But my favorite thing is that they had a lumberjack segment in this pageant, and they had this group from the Hayward area that came to Superior, and they played traditional lumberjack instruments of the time, and they called it music from the bunkhouse. I would give anything to see that. They were real lumberjacks. And they did this as I said, at the baseball field. It rained the whole time.
No.
Yes. In fact, it rained, I believe, almost every day that the royal couple was here. Because really, who plans something for the middle of June in Superior? I think the temperature was about 50 degrees every day. Yeah, so the pageant was a huge thing. But I think the royal couple was the big
They were a bigger draw than
they
the
were a
pageant
huge
itself?
draw, and they came over from Duluth on the train. I believe at that time, they had a private car, and they would come to Superior on the train, and then they would go about what they were going to do while they were here. They visited like the historical museum, the Douglas County Historical Society's museum, which was on in the old Roth house, not TJ's house, but his brother AA. His widow had donated it to the Historical Society to use as a museum. So they visited there, and they had a great time there because they had a lot of Norwegian exhibits.
Oh.
And then they went to the university and had a program there, and that's when the prince was made a chief. And the La Coudray Band of Ojibwe Indians.
Really?
They installed him as an honorary chief, and he was given the name, I believe, Chief Blue Sky.
Huh. I didn't know
So
that.
there's pictures in the telegram of that. But, they were going to also be like the masters of ceremony or whatever you would call it. Or they were going to review the parade when it happened. But it rained, so it got postponed, and they never did attend the parade. But
it did take place.
It did take place the next day, but they didn't. The royal couple wasn't there to see it, and they did come to Superior to be feted at a banquet at Concordia. Concordia has thrown some of the biggest parties ever in Superior. We talked earlier about the Dick Bong and Marge Bong wedding there. And so they put on a banquet for the crown prince and princess.
How much food are we talking?
600 people. Wow. They had 600 people there. And they made ham and mashed potatoes and green beans and cottage cheese and peach salad. And for dessert, they had ice cream and Norwegian cookies.
Norwegian cookies?
Norwegian cookies and coffee, of course.
Definitely.
Scandinavian, you have to have coffee. But, and the prince gave a speech. And then the next day they came back to Superior and they went to services at the church. And they presented the church, I believe, at that time with a Bible. But I think it's interesting. When I started researching this story, I didn't really know a lot. I have to admit, a lot about Norwegian history. Even though I'm 4% Norwegian, I didn't really know a lot. And I was surprised to find out that until 1905, Sweden and Norway were connected. They were ruled. Both countries were ruled by the King of Sweden, and had been for about 100 years. And then Norway got a little restless and decided they were going to split the two countries. It turned out, it was okay with Sweden, but they needed a king. They did not have a Norwegian king at that time, and in fact, the first king that was installed as king of Norway was actually a Danish prince named Carl. Yes, he was a Danish prince named Carl who happened to be married to the daughter of an English king. So
Danish and English, but
Right,
not a drop
right.
of Norwegian.
So he was Prince Carl, and he was the second son of the King of Denmark, and he never thought he was going to be king of anything. And he didn't want to be, really and truly. He was in the Danish Navy, and he was happy there. But he was finally talked into taking it, and he wasn't really sure if this was the right way for Norway to go. So he called for an election to see how many people approved of him becoming the monarch of Norway, and it was an 88% approval rating that they wanted him. I think it was a very good choice for what was down the road for Norway.
When was this?
I think he came to the throne in 1905.
Okay, so how many generations down were the crown prince and princess who came here?
Prince Olav was his son.
Okay.
So I guess he was a very just matter of fact man, very
Carl
down to earth. And his name, when he changed his name when he went to Norway, he was called Prince Haakon.
Prince Haakon. Oh,
And he,
as in the Birkebeiner Prince Haakon?
it must be, I don't know. And in fact, his subjects referred to him as Mr. King. They weren't big on, we think of the English royal family. They weren't really big on that sort of.
Didn't have to sire him or.
Yeah, and all the fanfare that went with it. They were very ordinary people. And so then his son, Olaf, was the crown prince, but the king didn't speak Norwegian until he was 33 years old. He didn't know it, but they accepted him. And I'm sure it's because all of these families were intermarried. And in fact, Olaf, he married Princess Martha of Sweden, so she was a Swedish princess.
Okay.
But
and those were the two. They came here.
They came
in
here
1939, and that was the Jubilee.
That was the Jubilee.
But then they came back. Was that the year they went to the Blues game, or was that the next?
Yes,
time
that was yes. Prince Olaf went to the Blues game. He had been in Duluth earlier. I think that was the day of the dedication of Anger Tower, but the game started at 9:00
p.m.
p.m. And he came here, and they sang Norwegian's national anthem in Norwegian and our national anthem, and they gave him a baseball that was signed by Maury Arnovich. I don't know. Maury didn't play for the Blues. He was a professional baseball player, but probably the best known of Superior's baseball players. And so the prince was there at the stadium. But if you look through the newspapers at that time, you know what's going on in Europe. You know that people are expecting war. You know it. Even in the United States, even though we were an isolationist country, really and truly, we did not want to go to war again. You could see that the government was building up our armed services. There were ships being made and planes being built and all of that. And you kind of knew what was, and I'm sure Olaf and Martha, his wife, knew what they were going to be facing when they finally went back to Europe. At the same time they were here, the King and Queen of England were touring the country too.
But they didn't come to Superior.
They didn't come to Superior.
Or Duluth.
No. And so people in Europe were telling us what was going to happen, and I don't know if we wanted to hear it or not, or did we want to help. So they go back. They go back to Norway. And in April of 1940, there was they didn't have a German embassy in Norway. They had a legation. But this legation invited all the government officials to the place where they were, a building they were in Norway, and they showed them a film that was called Baptism of Fire. They invited all these people, and they told them they had to wear white tie and tails. It was like it was a party. So they showed them this film called Baptism of Fire, which was what Germany had done to Poland when they occupied Poland in September of 1939. Oh, no. And the war started. And they basically told the Norwegians, if you don't, comply with us, this is what's going to happen to you. We're going to bomb your cities, destroy your buildings, kill people. 4 days later, the Germans were on their way. And they hit the country from every side, and they were coming by water to Oslo, which was where the king and the crown prince and princess were. And the Germans were they thought they knew what they were doing, in that there was an old fortress there where they were entering Oslo, and they thought it was just a museum, and that there was not going to be any way that these people could fight them off. Well, little did they know the Norwegians. Apparently there were 2 old cannons there, and they blew up the biggest ship in that the Germans had sent. Oh, wow. That they were sending to Norway, and destroyed it. So that gave time enough for the royal family to escape, to get on the move through Norway to safety. And Hitler was quite angry about that, and that's what he wanted. He only wanted 2 things. He wanted to capture the royal family, and he wanted Norway's gold, their gold reserves. Oh. He got neither because they took both.
Excellent.
And Olav and his father started their trek. Luckily, the princess and their 3 children got to Sweden, with some difficulty, but they got out of the country. But the king and the crown prince were determined to stay in Norway. They did not want to leave, but Hitler was out to get them, and all along their route that they went out of the country, they were continually attacked by airplanes, and they wanted to kill them. They finally got a ship where they could go out of the country, but the king didn't want to leave. He really didn't want to leave. He said, what are these people going to think about me if I desert them now to safety and they have to stay here and put up with this? And he thought maybe Olav should stay, and they convinced him. They said, if you leave him here, they're going to capture him, and they're going to tell you that they're going to kill him, and they probably will. So, he has to go too. And the king said, I just can't leave. And they kept telling him, well, they're just going to put words in your mouth and make you say these things, because they will tell you that they will kill the rest of your family if you don't comply with them. So he finally got on a ship. He and Olaf went to England, and they stayed there the whole time. 5 years till they could go home again. Wow. And Princess Martha went to Sweden, but she actually ended up in the United States then with the kids and stayed in the United States. She was in the Washington, D.C. area. And so, and Olaf was in England. He visited because obviously he came here in 1942.
Was it just him or the whole family?
He and Martha both came here.
In 1940.
And his dad was still in England, and the kids were, probably with the nannies in D.C. And they were on a trip that was organized to sort of get the support of the Allies, because we had entered the war by then. In December of 41, we had entered World War II. And so they came back to Superior. They liked Superior, I guess.
Wonderful. We made an impact.
We did, and they were in Duluth too. And they came over here, and they had another meal at Concordia.
Concordia. Did they get as many people this time?
Well, there was a slight problem. Apparently this time when they came over, the interstate bridge had to let several ships through. Oh. So their arrival was delayed by quite a bit, and they were sort of on more of a schedule this time. Oh. And they didn't spend a lot of time here, although there was a dinner planned. But Prince Olav and Princess Martha wanted to make it perfectly clear that they didn't want a lot of celebration, or, it had to be a simple visit because of what was going on in the world.
Did they do any speaking engagements or anything like that?
The prince spoke, and he spoke about what had happened and that we all needed to stick together. And you have to feel so sorry for them. I can't imagine if someone kicks you out of your country and it's 5 years till you can go home again and you leave everything. So, but it wasn't the big, it wasn't the big deal that it was in 1939.
Right.
But it was still an important visit. And the people in Superior asked them to come back again. And
Did they?
They said they would be back, but they weren't again. But, their son came back to Duluth.
Not that long ago.
Yeah, I think it was 2011 when he came back.
Okay.
So
they did come back, sort of.
Sort of, yes. The family came back. But the one thing I read about Anger Tower, which I found most touching, was that there was a plaque on there that, because it was actually built in memory of Bert Anger, who had been in the furniture business in Duluth.
Okay.
And when he died, he left, I think, 2/3 of his estate to the city of Duluth. Wow. So that's where Anger Park, Anger Golf Course, and Anger Tower get their names from, is Bert Anger. Oh. And when they built it, there was a plaque on it that said, Bert Anger, native of Norway, citizen of Duluth. And I thought, that says it all, doesn't it? It's just the perfect memory of him. So, yeah, but you'd never know from Superior that there was an Anger Tower.
Or that in this case, there were two cities vying for royal attention.
Right,
and
they
had
were.
To go back and forth. And
I'm going to go over to the Duluth Library and read those newspapers and see what their view is, because I think I saw a headline for one of the papers and it said something, royal couple comes to the Twin Ports. Well, that's Duluth Superior. So at least the Duluth Tribune was mentioning Superior in some sort of way. I'd like to see what the news reporting, but I do have to say the Telegram had a lot on its plate, because not only did they have the royal visit, but they had this whole Jubilee celebration. And I was telling you earlier how they put out a special edition of the Telegram that was full of Superior history and photos. Just it was wonderful. And in fact, the cover art was done by Dan Fitzpatrick, who was a Pulitzer Prize winning cartoonist from Superior.
I've never heard of
You've never heard of Dan
No.
Fitzpatrick? Yes, he did a syndicated column that was, or a syndicated cartoon that was run in all kinds of papers across the United States. He worked for the St. Louis Post-Dispatch.
What was it called?
I can't remember. It was just a single, it would be like a political cartoon.
Okay.
And the Telegram started running them about in the 1930s, 1939 or so, I think around the time that the royal couple was here. But he did the art for the cover of the special edition, and I think he did that too for our centennial in 1954. I think they got him to do that then too. But you could buy it for 5 cents, and they would ship it anywhere in the United States for 10 cents postage. And then if you wanted to go overseas, it was only 20 cents. So I would like to know, I wish those records were around, like how many of those did they send out? How many did people buy and send to their relatives back in Norway maybe?
Maybe.
Yeah.
And other places where
Right.
they had immigrated from.
Yeah. So there's a lot going on. So that's why I think that maybe the Telegram didn't have time to mention the Anchor Tower thing, but I may have missed it.
One sentence.
I may have missed it. Although I did read most of the articles pretty thoroughly. I also found out that down at the Vasa Temple, which is now home to the Douglas County Historical Society, they were showing a movie during this time that had been produced in the Soviet Union. I think it was something like When War Comes.
Oh, just what the Royals wanted to see. Huh?
And they had admission prices for both adults and children. I thought, yeah, that's probably something you want to take your kids to see. But they did show cartoons with it too, so I don't know.
Cartoons and a war film. It's
Yeah.
just best of both worlds.
There were a lot of Norwegian organizations in Superior too.
Okay.
And in fact that year they were celebrating the 125th anniversary of the Norwegian Constitution. So like the Sons of Norway and the Daughters of Norway had parties for this and speakers. And
Did they time them to take place while the Crown Prince and
I
Princess
think
were
they
there?
were here a little bit before. I think they did those celebrations a little bit before, but they were certainly involved in that dinner that they did for the royal couple. I think the sons and daughters presented them with gifts, the royal couple with gifts, and then the Northern Chorus, which is the Norwegian singers, were performing there. It was a very elegant evening. They had a quartet of stringed instruments playing, and one of the people performing in the quartet was Mrs. Thorpe Langley, who, if you're familiar with UWS, you know that Thorpe Langley Auditorium is in Old Main, and Thorpe Langley taught there for years, and he was also involved in the theater. But his wife played in the string quartet.
Oh, wow.
It was a very elegant evening, and our mayor at that time, Bryn Ostby, was also a Norwegian immigrant.
So many times to Norway.
And he, of course, was one of the speakers that evening, and he was eventually made like a special counsel for the Norwegian delegation or something. But poor Bryn was the last mayor of Superior. The last mayor. We'd had a mayor since the beginning and until, I think, 1941, where the city decided that we were going to go to the manager form of government. No, and they had a lot of get out of town. We don't want to see you anymore. Oh, welcome back. With certain managers. But it was until the late 1950s.
And that is a story for another day.
It is a story for another day.
Well, thank you for
You're
telling us
welcome.
about the royal visits. I did not even know. They were the only royals to ever visit Superior?
I believe so, but if anyone knows any different, and if anyone has a program from that pageant, I would love to see that.
Excellent. All right. So, thanks for listening to Archive Dive. New episodes are available monthly at superiortelegram.com or wherever you listen to podcasts. If you have a topic you'd like us to explore, email me at mlockwood@superiortelegram.com.